Welcome back to this tutorial session, and we have been able to look at the registration page and how the user can get themselves registered. And now we are going to be moving to the login functionality of the application, and we come back to our design. Don't forget, we have been able to design the screen for the login, and what we are moving forward to do now is to come up with the logic. And don't forget that we have also linked our database with our page through the settings tab, and we have been able to link our API key together with our database URL. Now we are going to go to this, make sure that this screen login is active. Then from there, come to the blocks, and what we are going to do now is we are going to look at this when this login button is clicked. We want to execute the login function while also validating the input feed in order to ensure that the user actually input their data correctly, and as we don't want to continue to sign in page until the email feed and password feed are filled. So the same logic, the same thing that we did for the registration page is what we are going to be doing for the login page. So we go ahead to the blocks, make sure the login screen is clicked, and go ahead to the blocks, and we are going to be defining one function, and that is the function to two function. First function to sign in the user, and the second function to authenticate the validate the feed. So go ahead to the function tab. It is just a repetition of what we did before. So come in here and say validate input. Let's call this function validate input. And in order for us to validate the input, all we just need to do is loop through it. These are concepts that we have discussed earlier on. So we look for our loop functionality. Come to our loop functionality with the for each. And we put our for each inside this function, and from there we create a list. This will be a list that will loop through just the email feed and the password feed. So I will remove this item. Yes, so I need just two feeds, email feeds and password feed. So to get that, I'll come to my UI component, and I'm going to get to my text login email, and I want the text. So put that as the first list. Together with the password, I'll do the same thing for the password. Text login password. And now I want to get the text. I'll put that as this. So I'll just delete this, and I also delete this. Moving forward, once we have looped through it, we are going to then say if you see that in the control. So we have explained all these concepts. So this is just a repetition. You should only be able to do it yourself now. This was a repetition of what we did earlier on for the registration part of the user. So we then come and check if the current iteration of this list is none or it is an empty string. So we check if it is none. No, I still want this to be there, but I want this to take the first space. And I also duplicate this block. To duplicate, just right click and you see the option of duplicate. So I come to that current iteration, which is, you can see under variables, I'll pick J, and I'll say if J is none, you get none under logic. If J is none, or I'm not saying and means that the two conditions must be true, but I am checking for either of these conditions. One of the conditions must be true, and then I will execute this block. Of course, I want an if else block, else else here. So you see settings, I'll clean up my blocks to make sure it's aligned properly. So I'll get the current iteration, which is the J, and I'll check if it's an empty string. If it's an empty string, and if any of this condition is true, the first thing I want to do is to set the error label. Don't forget label login error message. I'll set it to all feeds are required so that the user can see. I'll say all feeds are required. So all feeds are required, and I'll also set the valid input. Don't forget to define a variable at the top. So I'll define a variable called valid input. That is going to be an app variable because I am limiting its usage. I'll say login valid input. You can call this anything, but please make sure your variable name, they are very descriptive, giving an idea of what you are actually doing with it. Initially I'll set it to false. So if this happen, then I'll say that the valid input variable, which is, you can see under variable, set the variable valid input to false. Yeah. Logic, put that as false. Then I'll break out of the loop. So to break out, come to control, and you see break out of loop. You can also do the same. There's an option that also allow you to continue with the next situation, but here I want to break out of the loop. Otherwise, I want to set the variable valid input to true. I want to set the variable value so that the user can know that the variable is actually, so that our program can know that the condition or the inputs are validated, and we can go ahead with our login. So now I will now say, let me just put that in here, that when my button login is clicked, when button login form is clicked, when it is clicked, the first thing is I want to validate the input. So I'll call the functions validate input in order to get either true or false. So I will then check if the feed are validated, then go ahead to log in the user. Otherwise, do not log in. Once your block is overlapping, just clean up the blocks. So I am going to go here and say that if the variable login, if they are variable valid input, if it is true, then go ahead to sign in the user. Otherwise, do not sign in the user. Do not sign in the user. So now, having done that, I'll then create a function. I'll create a function that sign in the user. Create a function that sign in the user. I'll call this function sign in. Should I say user sign in? Whichever one. User sign in function. So of course, don't forget that we are still going to be using our Firebase database. That is what we are going to be using to sign the user in. So but before we do this, I want us to create two variables. The first one, now look at when we're registering, we actually, after signing the user in, we actually save the user ID in a variable in order for us to know if the user have been signed in or not, together with the email. So we are going to be doing that here, so that when the user sign in, we want to save their user ID, their unique user ID, and also their email in a stored variable. Stored variable implies that the variable or the space, the value that you store in that space is going to be available all through your applications, like all through your screens. Like it will be available in the screen login page, register, and every other subsequent screen that you are going to be creating. So I'm going to be creating those two variables now. I'm going to be initializing it here in this page. So I will go to variable, initialize. It's going to be a store variable, but please make sure that the name is the same. Make sure that the name that you give it is the same. Look at it here. You can even, for to be sure, you can just copy the exact value that you have there and come in here and paste it as for variable user ID. So I will also do the same thing, initialize store variable again, and this time around it is going to be the email. Now the reason why you are doing this is so that if the user has been signed in before, you don't want to take them to the login page again. You should just navigate them to the other pages or to the user dashboard. And when you get to the other pages too, if you want to know if the user has actually been authenticated and you want to restrict the access of that page to authenticated user, you just want to be sure that they have been signed in. And these are the variables that you're going to be using to confirm all that. So I'll do the same thing again, copy the variable, I'll put it as email. So now that we have been able to do that, we will then go ahead and say, now the first thing is, of course, the user might have been signed in before. You should check if they have been signed in before. If they are signed in, then you should navigate them to the dashboard. If they try to access the login page by any means, if you realize that they have signed in before by checking these two variables, then you should definitely navigate them or route them to the dashboard. So in order for us to be able to do that, I will just bring a block, not here. I'll say when this screen open, that means immediately the user get to the screen login, the first thing you should check is if they are actually logging. If they are not logging, then navigate them, then let them remain on the page. Otherwise, if they are logging, then let them go to the dashboard because you can't sign it twice. So I'll clean this block to have space. So this screen, when screen open, this is the same logic we are going to be repeating for other screen that the user must be authenticated. For you to check if they are signed. If they are not signing, you take them back to the login page. If they are signed, then you make them remain on that page. So I bring it to the top because that's like it's taking priority over the buttons. So when the screen open, I want to check if there's a value for the user ID. If your block is overlapping, don't forget what you do, you clean up. So I will come to the logic. I'll check if the variable user ID, store variable user ID, if it is none, if it is not equals to none, meaning that if there is a value for it, if it is not equal to none, then notice this is not like it crossed the equals to, that means it is not. This equals to, there's not equals, just like negating equals to or the opposite of equals to or equivalent to, whichever one you will like to call it. So we come to the none, we put the none here. If it is not equal to none, then if it's not equal to none, that means there's a value inside this user ID. That means the user has been signed in already. Then they should not remain on this page. What we are going to do is that we are going to navigate them. So we come to the control and we say navigate the user. That means take them to the user dashboard page because they have been signed in already.